first page,
Okay,
first page of information. And Deb, if you want to start with the intro.
I can do that. First, thank you for considering hosting an empathy dinner. We are very glad to share how this works and how easy it is truly to put together the ability to increase ALS awareness and help people understand um, what folks with disabilities are going through is incredibly important in today's world. Um, this can be designed as a fundraiser. It can be designed totally as education. It can be a combination of both, but advocating for folks living with ALS is at the bottom line. It is important in so very many ways. Um, so as we go through this, some of this is about IMALS, and I am happy to share because, like I said, I have found my tribe with these folks. IMALS is a patient-centric organization that works very hard to both promote advocacy as well as providing real world, real time help for folks living with ALS. You can see all the amazing things that have been accomplished in just a few years. And that is absolutely because of the passion and the commitment of a very small staff and a whole boatload of incredible volunteers. And so this is just one more thing to have in the toolbox to be able to continue raising awareness of ALS and um, educating other folks.
Okay, things to consider.
One of the very first things is really what is an empathy dinner? And as soon as you start talking about having one, you're going to have people nod their heads and pretend that they know what you're talking about, when in reality, they don't. So it's always a good idea to um, share with them what it means to have an empathy dinner. Part of this idea was blossomed because of the Tim Lowry panels that IMALS promotes, and the basis behind the Tim Lowry panel is that students who are going to be working with ALS patients can learn a gazillion times more by talking to patients than they will ever learn from reading a textbook. And so, in much the same analogy, no one will ever really understand what it's like to live with a disability, to be challenged physically, until you actually are living with that situation. And so the empathy dinner is both an adventure if you're of that mindset, or it can just be a learning opportunity. When guests arrive, they receive a disability. And we'll go into the options of disabilities much more in detail later on in this. Kelly has an amazing list, but folks don't know what kind of disability they will have until they arrive. And then they are asked to be to not cheat Okay, I was trying to come up with a positive way, but don't cheat. If you're not allowed to talk, don't talk. If you're not allowed to use your dominant hand, don't use it. And we ask them to do that for the time of the dinner while you're eating the food, because obviously that can be a difficult public event when you have a disability. And so have it the room set up so that people can engage with each other. They can talk back and forth to each other. They get to know other folks and they get some education while they're at it. As they're sitting around a table and one can't talk, well, maybe one has to help read lips or sign language or whatever. And so it can be, and generally in our experience, it has been a fun evening. If you're planning to raise funds, there are all different kinds of ways to do that. In the last one that we did, we approached a corporate sponsor and were blessed to have that corporate sponsor underwrite the vast majority of the costs for us. So that when we sold tickets, we didn't have to sell tickets at a lot at very much money because we knew it technically wasn't costing us anything. We had our costs underwritten. So again, this is a tool and it is designed so that you can make it your own and whatever works in your area or for the group of people that you're targeting is what you should do. We'll be happy to help and provide information, but very much take a look at what it's going to cost, what your food's going to be. You can do it as expensively as you like, or we had a young woman make many thousands of dollars serving spaghetti. And so it's entirely up to you.
Thanks, Deb. And you just had your second, right?
And
Annual. So,
uh-huh,
so yeah,
yes.
so you've got lots of experience in it.
Oh, yes. In the
So
land of the king, or the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So, go.
that's great. All right, so these next few slides, the intent is to emphasize and highlight the symptoms an ALS patient may encounter throughout their disease. And please keep in mind, each patient is unique. Their symptoms are unique, depending if they have bulbar onset, maybe they lose their function of speech first, or if they have limb onset, maybe they end up being bedridden but can continue to talk, throughout the disease. So just these many of these symptoms that we'll be talking about will be based on those particular the journey of the patient. So things to consider, you know think of your many inner circles of relationships that you have. Who should you ask? Ask your family, your friends, your coworkers and neighbors. Any affiliation that you have. It could be church, could be Bible study, other groups that you have, sports affiliations. Feel free to reach out to anybody that you're comfortable with asking, because it could be considered a big ask to participate, but your circle of friends best, and what to ask. Invite them to support this in this event, and that we're dedicated in raising awareness. That's maybe one of the biggest asks of this is that we want to raise awareness, because there's still so many people that don't know about ALS. They maybe participated in the ice bucket challenge but didn't know what it was, or they haven't heard about it you know recently. So we just want to make a difference and make a meaningful impact to our ALS community. And when to ask, it's never too early to start the conversation. put out some proposals, try to gather information on when people are available in those inner circles that you have. When you've got some feedback from people, send out a save the date. We suggest maybe a save the date because you might not have the location narrowed down yet, depending if you are going to host this at home. Maybe it'll be a small, intimate dinner, and especially as your first one, maybe it'll be small and intimate, or maybe you'll be able to secure some space at a community center or a church or a restaurant. And so, having the date narrowed down and sending out those save the dates are important to get them on people's calendar as soon as possible, because as we know, schedules change. So this will give people an idea of what to expect. And I apologize because I had jumped ahead on giving an intro on this part of the presentation. So again, these are symptoms that each patient most likely will incur throughout the disease. And so one thing that we're suggesting is you could create little note cards that as your guests come in, you give them a note card and say, you'll have a loss of, your left arm. You won't be able to use your right arm. You won't be able to use your legs. So they know in advance what they will be characterizing, throughout the dinner. So, and like Deb said, give them rules. Please adhere to your symptom and try to make it as realistic as possible with the props that we are kind of suggesting that you could use. So without reading every single detail, but loss of limbs. So maybe you've got an ACE bandage that you could wrap around the person's arm to their waist, or a belt, or an exercise bungee, something like that, whatever can work and whatever you have access to. If they're unable to speak, if that's their symptom, make them wear a mask or mouth tape or something so that they can't speak. And that other people know too, okay, they've got a mask, that means they're not supposed to talk. Unable to walk. So, you might have a wheelchair or know somebody that has a wheelchair. But we're kind of explaining here, maneuvering in tight places and traveling in public have become challenging. So that's one, symptom that many of the patients face. So we're just kind of highlighting that. Unable to self-feed. So brushing their teeth, feeding themselves because they can't use their hands. This is another thing where you could, somebody has to cut up their food for them. So whoever's sitting next to that guest, they have to feed them. So that might be a rule. So somebody might have two jobs, right? Their own, they can't maybe walk, but they have to also help cut the food of somebody that's sitting next to them. Lack of stamina. So, that's one thing too. People find they get more tired as the disease, spreads throughout their body. But if you've got like a rollator or access to one that, helps the patients move, help them with their mobility without using as much of their own, physical, it's not as physical taxing on the person. Lack of balance, falling prevention. So just saying, if somebody has a cane, if you've got a cane or a crutch or a walker, all of those type of props will help emphasize this particular symptom as well. Let's see. So additionally, we've got muscle weakness and paralysis. Arm weakness can start on either or both sides. Attendees will have their paralyzed arm in a sling or use wrist or ankle weights. These are all props that you or maybe a friend will have access to. Lack of balance and stability. Care partners need to reassure persons living with ALS The safety is more important than what other people think. Attendees will use a walker. So again, just emphasizing where these props can be used with multiple symptoms. Foot drop. Sometimes when it's limb onset, this is a symptom that is um, discovered early on because falls happen. You might the patient might think, oh, I tripped over the sidewalk. It was uneven, or toes are stubbed, and tripping hazards become more prevalent. Care partners encourage people living with ALS to use doctors' recommended medical assistive devices. Attendees wear a brace or a boot. So maybe you've had a sprain or something where your foot's been in a boot. You can use that. So again, these just want to highlight, these are all just suggestions to you. Obviously, not everybody, fortunately, right, has had some of these things. Maybe, haven't had anyone in the house that's had a broken arm or a broken leg, and you wouldn't have crutches or a sling. So, reach out to your friends and family if somebody does have some of these props. It just helps make it a little more, emphasize the realistic symptoms of the patients. So, um, then let me see, we'll scroll to the next slide here. So during the event, as Deb mentioned, it can be a fundraiser, or it could just be just a raising awareness event. But if you're doing a fundraiser, maybe you can get raffles, you can get prizes from local stores. Maybe they'll give you something you can create a basket with, and you could raffle it off for $10 to $25. Maybe there's an organization that will give you some pens or a hat, and you can raffle those off, or give them as prizes to people, and just pull names out as a raffle. Another thing, playing music in the background. With social media now, we know, um, anyone that's famous, they sometimes use their publicity to promote awareness about these diseases. And so, recently we heard about Roberta Flack, and then we know John Driscoll Hopkins from Zach Brown Band. He has ALS. Jason Becker, Rebecca Luker, and Aaron Lazar. So those are many individuals who on social media, they post information about their journey and obviously their music. So you could play that in the background, kind of make it a little personal to the ALS community. And then on a TV or a monitor, a laptop, you could have a slideshow that have clips from I Am ALS that share stories. For example, you could show the trailer that Brian Wallach and his wife Sandra have, for their For Love or Life documentary, No Ordinary Campaign. And so you could show that trailer. You could show a trailer to Lukey and the Lights, which is a cartoon version of a little ALS awareness cartoon. So you could also find clips on doctors' comments. I had a similar event. It was a celebration of life, and I pulled up some clips from Jason's doctors talking about platform trials, things like that, or some of his favorite songs, and displayed that. So just to make it a little more personal. You could have signs on a tripod that kind of talk about the different organizations that you're involved in, or would like to be involved in, and show the community events that are upcoming, and maybe some events that you're participating in. Maybe you're going to a Lou Gehrig Day event, or you're going to an ALS walk or some other fundraiser. So you could kind of highlight those, or make little note cards and pass them out to people and say, I'd love for you to come. I'd love for you to support our community. Just there's lots of little ways that you can make this personal and really engage your guests. So, and thanking them for participating and hopefully continued support. So, some little ideas. So, if you've got any questions, let us know. We're happy to help put your event together to be as successful as possible. Um, Deb, I'm scrolling over to the during and after the
Oh,
event Q&A.
doing the frozen food. Oh, I should do that.
Are there any questions that we want to address right now before up to this point, we've been talking about preparation and what to do. Before we go into talking about how to wrap this up, does anyone have any questions? Okay, Christy, not hearing you tell me there's somebody in the chat, I'm gonna
There
keep
is nothing in the chat.
There's nothing in the chat. All right, so then we're going to talk about you've had this, you've got people to come, and let me just say, I was listening to Kelly talk. It talks about an empathy dinner, but it could just as easy be an empathy brunch or an empathy lunch or a come have dessert or whatever. It really is a flexible event that can work with you and the people that are around you and your supporters. If you are the host or hostess for this event, I would recommend that you, as I'm told it's called, work the room. Talk to people that are there. Maybe make sure that you get to meet folks that you don't know or were brought by someone you know so that you get to interact with them, because at least for me, I have found that people do not respond with action until they know why and what's important about it, or till they until they care about the person that's being affected. So building those relationships with other folks that are now seated at a table in a room with you is important. And so you can answer questions, you can provide additional information. The little bit that's on the card is very good to get you started, but it's important. Maybe you already have that symptom and relating a personal story of why it was a challenge for you when that started. Or even better, a humorous story of how you overcame that particular challenge in the situation is incredibly important. As dinner is over and folks are wrapping up, we always have made sure that they know that they are miraculously healed of their disability at that point. And so all of those tools and all of those masks can come down, and we encourage dialogue. It implants what really is going on, and it helps folks understand how their feelings are relevant to making a change in how they see other folks that do live with a disability that does not have a miraculous recovery the moment dinner is over. So how did that make you feel? What was your response emotionally when you had to acknowledge you were for the next hour going to have to sit in a wheelchair? Did this experience change your perception of people with ALS and of people with disabilities in general? I'm relating a story. My my neurologist and his wife were at our event last month. And the two of them as a couple were given the disability of one to be in a wheelchair and the other to be a caregiver and to push them around. And it was interesting because we let them choose who was going to sit and who was going to push. And my neurologist was in the wheelchair, his wife was pushing him. And their comments after dinner were impactful in that, I mean, this man deals with folks with ALS and other MNDs every single day. And his comment was that, excuse me, when he sat in the chair and realized that he was going to have to ask his wife to push him anytime he wanted to go somewhere, was like, oh, wait, that I'm not sure I like that. He had the option of choosing to push, but he chose to sit. So it does, in fact, immediately put somebody into a position of thinking and responding different. And so we ask folks just like that to share an experience or a feeling that did stop you or make you catch your breath before you went on. We ask people to look back. How have you treated someone who has a disability that maybe you didn't handle quite as well as you wish you might have? Is there a lesson or a something that you learned this evening that will help you do better the next time? We ask folks, who else needs to hear this? This originally started with kind of an offhand comment from one of our board members, and it started in a junior high group. This is not limited to adults at all. And so as you ask people to think about who would they like to have experienced this, as you have that conversation, that may be, in fact, what you do the next time you decide to do an empathy dinner. Do you know someone who lives with a disability, who now you might have some more understanding, some more compassion, some more admiration for, because living with a disability, a physical disability, can be very difficult if you are out and about in public. If you had, we ask if their symptom that they experienced for the evening was not as hard as maybe someone else's experience was, which would you rather have or not rather have, and why or why not? It's all a way to get people to talk and to truly understand that for those of us who are living this life, we can't get up from the dinner table, walk away, and it doesn't go away for us. And so that's the challenge of talking to people and allowing them to experience an empathy dinner.
Thank you, Deb, and thanks for sharing those personal experiences too. I was taking down some notes as you were talking too, because you're right. Having a disability is if you don't have someone in your inner circle that has a disability and you're not used to interacting with somebody with a disability, then it's very challenging and for the patient and for their caregiver, right? It's completely new. It's different. So, like you said, you know, the community doesn't want to be seen any differently, right? Than they were last year, right? So you don't want it to be awkward. So this kind of raises that awareness. And um, I like that you highlighted that. And, there are so many um, science and technology has come so far for those who have like a bulbar onset as they get early on, right? There's voice banking, there's a lot of opportunities for people to preserve their voice. And then eye gazing technology too. So those are, I mean, obviously very expensive tools and equipment for for the patients, but there's a lot of tools out there to help our community as
Kelly,
well.
I'm gonna interrupt and add another story. Not
Yeah,
at the empathy dinner, but at a family gathering, all sitting around the dining room table, and I'm no longer able to feed myself. And so I um very often, and especially at home, use an assistive device that it's called OBI, and Mr. Obi feeds me and does a very good job of it. And so there were six of us seated around this table, and I was eating and talking, and it was a quote unquote normal dinner. And I looked up, and no one else at the table was eating. They were all going, watching Mr. Obi feed me. Um, it's okay. I knew everybody very intimately that was at that table, but it takes a little bit of time to get used to.
sure. Rip that Band-Aid off at that dinner, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh. Christy, are there any questions in the chat, or does anybody have any questions?
There are no questions in the chat. Oh, wait, there is one comment. I plan to approach local high schools in the fall and explore their community service or public service clubs about hosting an empathy dinner. I see these audiences open to taking risks like this. Ideally, I line up restaurants to donate meals, and we can use the dinner as a fundraiser in the coming months. I'll report on how that went. Perfect. And we also had two, I think two, Deb, if I'm correct. We've had at least two high school students host these,
Yeah.
one of which was Roseanne Hickman's granddaughter. And the other girl's name is completely escaping me right now. Actually, there was three. Now I'm thinking of another one. Jack did one as well. And the two that did the fundraising, I believe Riley was able to raise like $7,000 just on her event, and I forgot what Jack did. I think he raised a ton of money as well. So I know high schools are open to doing these things as well.
Didn't Riley is who did the spaghetti dinner.
Right. Yeah. 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 Yep.
Mhm.
That's awesome. That had to be a pretty large event, I'm thinking.
I think they had other ways of raising money
Okay.
too, not just
Okay.
Yeah.
ticket sales. And that brings me to one of the points that I thought about this year. Last year we had 40-ish people. This year we had 80-ish people. And as I thought about it, and you do the post-event debriefing and what went right and what could we do better, it occurred to me that it wouldn't be a good idea to have an event much larger than that, because you would lose the intimacy, the ability to have that post dinner discussion to get folks to interact, unless you would have like table monitors or somebody that would lead a discussion at the table. So that's just a thought that we had after the one that we just finished.
No, that's great advice. Deb, for the difference between your first and second, I mean, obviously some people were repeat, I'm assuming, guests, but
Yeah.
how did you get it to be so expansive year over year?
Well, I'd love to tell you that we started planning earlier. Um, and we did try, but it was the second, so that helped a little. I have to say that working with this tool for the board, for me to be able to say to the board, no, you know what we did last year, you know how it worked, here's the toolkit. And for the 2 weeks right before the event, I was in Washington, D.C. for 1 week, and I was in Colorado for the second week. And I flew in on Sunday, and the event was Tuesday. The board was able to work with this event, and they did a great job. One of the things that we did this year a little different was um, we challenged people to reserve a table. We had our tickets for $25. There were 8 people at the table. And so commit, Mr. Supporter and Advocate of Deva's Hope, to $200, which would be about the same cost if you went to our caterer, was Fratelli's, a well-known restaurant in town. If you went to Fratelli's and had dinner, you couldn't feed 8 people for $200. So make that commitment, either pay for it yourself or find 7 of your friends who want to eat dinner with you and get them to pay $25. I think that was a great way to increase our attendance. We've talked about it because by having people all sit at a table that they knew everybody, didn't encourage as much commingling as we had last time. And so that would be something to pay attention to and be able to either acknowledge it's going to happen or change the floor plan so that they sold themselves a table, but they don't all get to sit together.
And Deb, didn't you have a guest speaker? You had Lori.
We did.
Yeah.
We had a guest speaker, and I think that helped. It wasn't just about sitting in a wheelchair all evening. Lori Carey, who does the I'm Dying to Tell You podcast, has over 100 podcast episodes. Drove down from Cincinnati. She was excellent. And a friend of mine actually said that was the highlight of the event for her, that she was able to listen to Lori's story and to be able to understand from a different perspective. And I think that also helps. You know, the folks that you're working with that are advocates for you, that are friends of yours, that are in your circle, they know you, they're really tired of hearing you have ALS. No, that's not true. but but hearing someone else's story does bring a deeper, wider perspective to it.
Mm, that's great. And Christy, don't we have videos? We've got like a video YouTube share, right? Where people have shared their stories too. So someone could always pull clips off of that as well and play those.
Yep.
Mhm.
So we can send those out to you as well. We've got folks from IMET ALS who share their stories. We also have they're like little 30-second, I think there's 9 or 10 of them, 30 seconds fight to end ALS videos where like I have one where I tell my story as a caregiver for Kurt. So they're really, oof, like they're really powerful tools. So they could definitely be a good opener for a session or shared during or anytime during an empathy dinner.
That's great. So yeah, we try to have as many ideas, brainstorming how we could make this such a successful empathy dinner and or as Deb said, brunch, lunch, whatever. And with her experience and hosting two already, it's great.
I have a question for you.
Hmm?
Do you think, because I'm thinking of folks that, yes, we want as many people to come in a community as we could. Do you think this would be a good tool for somebody who is just diagnosed with ALS, who wants to share with their family, hey, by the way, I have ALS and this is what's coming, and I want you to be informed, and this is how we can help you better understand what it's going to be like living with ALS?
Hmm. Yeah. And from a personal perspective, Deb, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was going to ask you because I know early on you talked about how you would share that with close friends and family. Um, I think done that, yes, it could be effective. Um, I would be careful not to scare people off
Right.
too fast. Um, they run away fast enough anyway, so um, make sure you're not scaring them. Maybe stick with Lukey and the lights, uh, kind of level. But yes, I think that could be, and I also think that um, that people are much more attentive when they have a personal experience. So if you have, it may not be all about you. If you were telling your family that that would be a good time to bring others in and hear their stories.
Mhm. Yeah, and maybe it could be toned down a bit, just some of the early on symptoms kind of a thing too. Um,
Mhm.
and each patient is different too. Like my husband, for example, he didn't want anybody to know for like 6 months, not even our children. So he would not have been the ideal person to host one of these events or be a participant in it. But we have so many people in our community who are huge advocates for themselves and their neighbor. So, I mean, like Deb and like Lori, and, I mean, they're just amazing. So, everybody's different.
Mhm. And truly, I know I've said it several times, but take this tool and only read every other line or add your own lines in between the ones you don't read. This is just a foundation for your personality, your story, your sphere, your area of the country, your culture, whatever it is, make it your own.
I just put the link to the Fight to End ALS videos in the chat, so you can go grab them. Nicola wants, or she's saying, thank you so much. This is great info and really inspiring. Is the booklet available somewhere online? Yeah, we could put it in the chat for you, and we'll follow up too with an email to everybody, but I'll drop it in the chat as well.
Mhm.
Easier said than done.
And Chrissy, I know you announced that we recorded this. Where can people find it?
I will have it put onto, sorry, I can't think and talk at the same time. So that I just put the link to the toolkit in the chat. I will send the Zoom recording to Emily tomorrow morning, and she'll drop it in YouTube, and then we can send it out to everybody afterwards. And then I'll share it with you so you can share it out with folks as well.
Awesome.
Thank you. There's another note in the chat while you were pasting that from Isabel, saying she's thinking about doing it at a park this summer, a small group.
Oh yeah, I love that,
Mhm.
Isabel. That's amazing.
Yep. There are no rules. I don't pay attention to them anyway.
As a patient, do you follow the rules, Deb?
I try really hard to do what my doctor tells me.
Yeah.
Well, we have 7 minutes left. If there's any follow-up questions, speak now or forever hold your questions until later. But thank you, Kelly and Deb. I know how much work you put into this, and I know these events are very powerful and help spread that awareness that we so desperately need in our community. So, Deb, thank you for bringing this idea to us. And, Kelly, I know that the two of you work so hard on putting this together. So I look forward to hearing other stories about how you all make this happen in your communities with your family. Feel free to share those. You can email them to us. I will put my email in the chat, and then I can always share them out with the rest of the group. I told you I can't talk and type at the same time. There you go. So if you want to share stories, and if you have any questions that pop up, if you're starting to plan, just shoot me your questions and I'll get them over to Deb and Kelly, and then you will be in good hands. Actually, I think your contact information is in the toolkit, isn't it?
I think so.
Hmm.
It is. I think so.
Okay.
Well, we'll
Should
make
be
sure
if
that you
it's
get it
not.
some way or something.
Yeah,
Yes, because please reach out if you've got questions.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, everybody. I hope that you
Thank
enjoy
you.
the rest of your night. Our nightly Orlando, Florida hurricane is blowing through right now. So
Goodness.
I know every night in the summer, it's here. It only lasts about 10 minutes, so it's fine. But yeah.
It held off or it's starting now? It held off.
Yeah, it just started. So
Okay.
yeah.
Perfect timing.
Yep. All right. Well, have a good rest of your evening, everybody. And thank you so much for being part of it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.